Your openness is not a virtue. It is a schematic for your own psychological demolition. This brings us to tactical law number 1. To become you must become unprofitable to the manipulator. Masters of this art do not see you as a peer. They see you as an objective. They operate with a kind of radar, a cold and constant cost-benefit analysis. There are categories of individuals they learn to actively avoid, not because these people are louder or more aggressive, but because they are psychologically fortified in a way that makes the cost of engagement too high. Their power is a quiet, absolute sovereignty over their own minds. This is your guide to those 10 archetypes of resistance. You will not be taught to play their game. You will be taught how to make the game impossible for them to play against you. Section 1. The one who operates from an internal codex. First archetype a manipulator cannot breach is the individual whose life is governed by a fortified code of integrity. This is not the person who is merely nice. Niceness is a performance, an external script driven by the desire for approval. That need for validation is the manipulator's primary point of entry. It is the vulnerability they are trained to exploit with flattery, guilt, or the threat of social exile. The person of integrity operates from a different system entirely. Their self-worth is not a variable determined by external opinion. It is a constant, forged by their adherence to an internal codex of principles. Their validation is generated from within. Psychologists call this an internal locus of control. We will call it sovereignty. They have done the brutal work of defining their values, and they refuse to deviate from them, even when it ensures they will be misunderstood. When the manipulator deploys their standard toolkit, it shatters. Flattery is inert because this person does not require external praise. Guilt trips fail because their actions are aligned with their internal codex, not the emotional demands of others. The threat of being disliked is not a threat. It is an anticipated and accepted cost of authenticity. They see past the performance of niceness, recognizing it as a strategic ruse. This does not make them cynical. It makes them analysts. Cultivating this begins with a single decision: to make your own principles the sole authority you answer to. Your integrity becomes a wall they cannot scale. Section 2. The realist who acknowledges the shadow. Second individual who is untouchable is the realist, the one who accepts the full spectrum of human nature, including its capacity for strategic cruelty. This is not pessimism. It is strategic awareness. They do not operate under the naive assumption that all people are driven by good faith. They understand that deceit and selfishness are not anomalies. They are tools that people use. The manipulator's entire strategy depends on your assumption of their goodwill. The victim narrative, the feigned ignorance, the promises they have no intention of honoring. These tactics are designed to exploit the social contract that compels you to trust. The idealist, who resists the idea that someone could be intentionally deceptive, is the perfect target. Their refusal to see what is right in front of them is the blind spot the manipulator requires. The realist, however, has eliminated this blind spot. They know the game exists. They have studied the plays. When someone deploys a victim narrative to bypass accountability, the realist does not offer immediate sympathy. They observe. They analyze 4 patterns and inconsistencies. When a grand promise is made, they do not commit to the words. They wait for the actions that will either validate or expose the lie. This worldview is a psychological shield. When the manipulator's mask eventually slips, the realist is not shattered by disbelief. The revelation is merely a confirmation of a known possibility. This allows them to remain analytical, while others become reactive. You do not lose your faith in humanity by acknowledging its darker facets. You turn on a light that makes it impossible for the predator to operate in the shadows. Section 3. The deeply self-aware individual, the third archetype, is the one who has achieved profound. A manipulator is a psychological hacker. They scan for your unexamined beliefs, your emotional triggers, your deepest insecurities. These are the backdoors they use to gain access and control. The self-aware individual has done the internal work. They have mapped their own psychological territory, identified their vulnerabilities, and sealed them from the inside. This is more than knowing your preferences. This is a forensic understanding of your own emotional architecture. You know what triggers you, and because you know it, you can manage it. If you know you have a deep-seated fear of being perceived as selfish, you can instantly recognize when a manipulator is weaponizing that specific fear to coerce you. That recognition creates a critical space between the stimulus and your reaction. It returns control to you. This self-knowledge is an internal anchor. Those who lack it look outside themselves for definition, making them subjects for anyone offering a confident narrative. The manipulator can exploit their distorted self-image, telling them who they are, what they think, and how they feel. This is gut, but against the self-aware, this tactic is useless. It is like trying to convince a cartographer that he is lost in a city he designed. Their values are not abstract concepts. They are the governing principles of their A manipulator can create a fog of emotional chaos, but the self-aware individual holds an internal compass that is immune to the weather. To become this person, you must turn your analysis inward. A manipulator's power is derived from knowing you better than you know yourself. Remove that advantage, and their power evaporates. Section 4. The individual with high emotional intelligence. The fourth archetype, a manipulator's tactical nightmare, is the person with highly developed emotional intelligence. Emotional hijacking is the manipulator's primary method of attack. They create guilt, inject fear, and manufacture urgency to provoke a predictable emotional response that serves their objective. They pull your emotional strings. The person with high EQ has no strings to be pulled. First, they possess They register the feeling guilt, anger, fear boot. They do not grant it executive control. When a manipulator says, "After everything I've done for you, ... the emotionally unintelligent person is flooded with guilt and capitulates. The person with high EQ registers the guilt, pauses, and analyzes its origin. They can label the tactic for what it is, a strategic play, rather than accepting the emotion as a legitimate debt. This disarms the weapon. Second, their empathy is They can perceive and acknowledge another's emotional state without assuming responsibility for it. A manipulator stages a dramatic display of distress to obligate you. The high EQ individual can state, "I recognize that you are upset," validating the feeling without internalizing the obligation. This is the critical distinction between empathy and absorption. Third, their social awareness functions as a form of radar. They listen beyond the words, detecting the dissonance between a person's language and their intent. They see the game being played on a meta level, which prevents them from being drawn into the surface-level drama. You develop this not by building a wall against emotion, but by building a control room. From there, you can observe the emotional data, analyze its source, and make decisions based on your own objectives, not on the chaos they are attempting to engineer. Section 5. The one who trusts their internal alarms. Fifth archetype manipulators avoid is the individual with a finely calibrated intuition who has learned to trust it without question. Intuition is not a mystical force. It is your subconscious mind processing vast archives of past experience and pattern recognition at high speed, delivering the result as a gut feeling. It is a subconscious threat detection system. Manipulators are masters of the constructed facade. Their charm, their vulnerability, their trustworthiness, it is all a performance. On the surface, the script is perfect, but the intuitive person detects the subtle artifacts that others dismiss. A microexpression, a fractional hesitation in the voice, a feeling of offness they cannot yet prove with logic. Most people are conditioned to override this internal alarm, dismissing it as paranoia. The person who trusts their intuition treats it as actionable intelligence. This trust is their first line of defense. It prompts them to proceed with caution, to observe with greater intensity, and to withhold immediate trust and sensitive information. Crucially, they do not wait for logical proof to act. They will not remain in a dynamic that feels corrosive simply because they cannot yet articulate every reason why. Their internal compass, guided by this intuitive data, directs them away from manipulative individuals. To strengthen this system, you must practice observation and create silence. A mind filled with noise cannot hear the signal. Log your intuitive hits. Note them down. Revisit them later. As you validate the accuracy of the system, your trust in it fortifies. This internal voice becomes your most loyal protector. Section 6. The independent thinker with a network. The sixth unmanipulatable archetype is a paradox. The sovereign thinker, who is also deeply socially integrated. This combination is a direct countermeasure to the two primary pillars of manipulation: group pressure and isolation. First, their cognitive independence. They are resistant to the pull of groupthink. Manipulators, particularly in group settings, leverage social proof to create a false consensus, making it seem as if everyone agrees. The fear of being the dissenter is a powerful psychological lever. The independent thinker is not moved by this. Their validation comes from their own critical analysis, not from the crowd. They are willing to stand as an outlier if they assess that the group is being strategically misled. However, this independence does not make them a recluse. This is where the second component, the social network, becomes critical. Isolation is the manipulator's prime directive. An isolated target loses all external points of reference until the manipulator's voice becomes their only reality. The independent and connected individual makes this impossible. They actively cultivate a small, trusted circle, what we will call a reality check network. When an interaction leaves them in a state of confusion, they do not internalize it. They activate the network. They present the data. This was the sequence of events. This was the response. I request an external analysis. This single act shatters the manipulator's controlled environment. It introduces objective observers who are outside the manipulator's emotional field and can identify the red flags instantly. Isolation is the darkness the manipulator needs. Your network is the light that makes their work impossible. Section 7. The emotionally secure and confident person. The seventh archetype is the individual who possesses genuine, quiet confidence. Manipulation feeds on insecurity, guilt, passive aggression, and undermining comments are persistent tools designed to target your self-doubt. The manipulator seeks to establish an imbalance of power, positioning themselves as the arbiter of your worth. The emotionally secure person is immune to this because their worth is not a subject for negotiation. This is not arrogance. True confidence is a state of internal self-acceptance that requires no external validation. They are not hungry for the approval the manipulator offers as bait. Therefore, they do not take the bait. When a manipulator attempts a guilt trip, I suppose my needs just aren't important. It is designed to trigger an insecure person's need to prove their selflessness. The confident person recognizes it as a bid for control. They can respond with calm assertion. My decision is not a measure of your importance. It is a measure of my capacity right now. They do not take the accusation personally because their identity is not threatened by it. Furthermore, they are not afraid of conflict or of being disliked. The fear of confrontation is a powerful tool of compliance. The secure person understands that strategic conflict is sometimes necessary to defend a boundary. If a manipulator pushes, the confident person does not crumble. They hold the line calmly, because their need for self-respect is greater than their need for the manipulator's approval. You cultivate this security by challenging your own negative internal monologue and by celebrating your own agency. As you become the sole source of your own validation, the manipulator's primary toolkit is rendered powerless. Section 8. The one who remains calm under pressure. Eighth person a manipulator finds impossible to control is the one who can maintain a state of calm presence, even in the face of a direct psychological assault. Manipulators require an environment of emotional chaos. Their objective is to trigger a strong, immediate reaction: fear, anger, confusion, because an emotionally reactive person has lost access to their rational mind. In that state, you become highly seductive. The calm person denies them this battlefield. Their composure is a tactical weapon. By remaining calm, you retain control of your own mind. The manipulator attempts to stir the waters to create murky confusion. An emotional reaction is you helping them. But if you remain still, the sediment settles. You see with absolute clarity what is happening beneath the surface. This state of presence prevents them from bypassing your rational mind. This is profoundly disarming. Your emotional outburst is the expected move. It gives them material to work with. They can use your reaction to gaslight you. See, you're the one who is overreacting. When you provide unshakable calm, you break their script. You give them nothing. If they deploy a provocative statement engineered for an emotional detonation, the calm person might pause, hold eye contact, and ask in a neutral tone, "Explain what you intended with that statement." This forces the burden back onto them. It compels them to deconstruct their own weapon under the clear light of your composure. To develop this, you must practice conscious regulation of your nervous system. When you feel a trigger, breathe. This physiological act is a circuit breaker for the fight-or-flight response. Your peace becomes your power. It creates a field of stability that chaos cannot penetrate. Section 9. The non-defensive individual. The ninth unmanipulatable personality is the individual who does not become defensive. Putting someone on the defensive is a core manipulative tactic because it is an immediate concession of power. The moment you begin to justify or defend yourself, you have accepted the manipulator's frame. You have accepted the role of the accused, and they have become the judge. The non-defensive person refuses to enter the courtroom. Defensiveness is born of insecurity. When a manipulator makes an accusation like, "You only think of yourself," the instinct is to counter with evidence. "That's not true. I did this for you, and I did that." You believe you are defending your honor, but you are falling into their trap. The focus has shifted from their attack to your frantic justification. The non-defensive person operates from a different protocol. They do not feel the compulsion to justify, argue, defend, or explain. They recognize the accusation not as a genuine grievance, but as a strategic move. Instead of reacting defensively, they might respond with a calm, "I'm sorry you see it that way," or "That's your perspective." These statements are powerful because they acknowledge the other person's statement without validating it as truth. They disengage from the accusation itself. An even more powerful technique is to state your position without justification. If pressured to do something and told a good friend would do this, a non-defensive response is simply, "I am not able to do that." The sentence ends there. Adding "because" provides them with material to argue against. A firm, simple statement gives them nothing. When you refuse to get entangled in their web of accusations, you deny them the leverage they require. Section 10. The one who prioritizes self. The 10th archetype is the individual who relentlessly prioritizes self-care and maintains impenetrable boundaries. This is not about indulgence. It is about resource management. Manipulative dynamics are designed to be extractive. They drain your time, your energy, and your emotional resources, leaving you depleted and easier to control. The person committed to self-preservation is fundamentally incompatible with this parasitic dynamic. This person treats their own well-being as a non-negotiable priority. They develop a heightened sensitivity to their own energy levels. They feel when an interaction is draining them, and they do not ignore that data. They see emotional exhaustion as a clear signal that a boundary has been breached. Because their own resources are managed and protected, they are unwilling to let another person drain them. This awareness leads directly to strong boundaries. Boundaries are not requests. They are the rules of engagement for interacting with you. Manipulators are boundary probers. They will test your perimeter constantly. They will make you feel guilty for saying no. They will ignore your stated limits. The person with weak boundaries capitulates to keep the peace. The person with strong boundaries views enforcement as a necessary act of self. They can say no without guilt. If the manipulator continues to push, they will create distance or excise the person from their life. This willingness to walk away is the ultimate trump card. The manipulator's power ends the moment they realize you value your own well-being more than their approval. Their cost-benefit analysis registers that the cost of trying to control you is absolute failure. These 10 archetypes are not innate personality types. They are not special powers. They are tactical skills. They are principles of psychological self-defense that can be learned, practiced, and fortified. Immunity to manipulation is not about becoming cold or distrustful. It is about becoming strategically aware. It is the construction of a mental fortress built on a foundation of self-respect so absolute that no external force can breach it. The most unmanipulatable people are not the loudest. They are the most centered. They have turned their analysis inward, and in doing so, they have made their own mind a territory that no one else can conquer. If this analysis has provided you with a new lens, affirm its value by engaging the like button and subscribe for further instruction in mental resilience. I have a question for you. Which of these 10 archetypes is your primary fortress? Which one are you currently working to fortify? Share your analysis in the comments below. Your observation could be the external data point another person needs to see today. Remember, your awareness is your shield. Your peace is your power. Protect Italiano.